Welcome to the Heart's Haven. Let the story begin. I know you. A poor girl said the millionaire realized she was his daughter. The city moved fast that afternoon, all glass reflections and hurried footsteps, people chasing meetings, numbers, somewhere to be. No one noticed the little girl standing near the revolving doors of Whitmore Tower, no one except him. Daniel Whitmore almost walked past her. He had done it 1,000 times before, ignored the noise, the need, the human interruptions that didn't fit neatly into his calendar. His phone buzzed in his hand, another message from the board, another reminder of how important he was supposed to be. He didn't look up, not until he heard her voice. I know you. It wasn't loud, it wasn't desperate, it didn't beg. It stopped him anyway. Daniel's steps slowed, just slightly at first, like his body hesitated before his mind could catch up. Something in the way she said it soft, certain, cut through the noise of the street, like it didn't belong there. He turned. She couldn't have been older than 8. Her coat was too thin for the wind that curled between the buildings, her sneakers worn at the edges, her hands wrapped tightly around the straps of a small, faded backpack. But it wasn't her clothes that held him still. It was her eyes. Blue, clear, steady in a way that didn't match the rest of her. She looked at him like she wasn't guessing, like she was remembering. Daniel frowned, a reflex more than a thought. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" he asked, his voice controlled, distant, the same voice he used in boardrooms and negotiations, the one that never let anything real slip through. The girl tilted her head slightly, studying him, not intimidated, not impressed. "I've seen you before," she said. "Not here." A strange flicker passed through his chest, quick, uncomfortable, gone before he could name it. He told himself it was nothing, just a child, just coincidence. But his feet didn't move. Around them, the city kept going. Taxi horns, snatches of conversation, the revolving doors spinning endlessly behind him. Yet the space between them felt still. "What's your name?" he asked, more out of instinct than intention. She hesitated, just for a second. Then, Lily. The name landed somewhere deeper than it should have. Daniel didn't react outwardly. Years of discipline made sure of that. But inside, something shifted, like a memory brushing against the surface, not fully formed, not fully gone. Lily took a small step closer. "I know you," she said again, quieter this time, like she wasn't trying to convince him anymore, only reminding him. And for the first time in years, Daniel Whitmore, billionaire CEO, a man who controlled everything, felt something he couldn't control at all. A feeling he hadn't felt in a very long time. Recognition. Daniel did not understand why he did not leave. That was the first thing that unsettled him. He had places to be, people waiting, decisions worth millions sitting unread on his phone. His entire life was built on movement, on precision, on never standing still longer than necessary. And yet, he stayed. The wind curled between the buildings again, sharper this time, tugging lightly at Lily's thin coat. She did not react to it. She just stood there, looking at him with that same quiet certainty, as if time worked differently for her. Daniel cleared his throat, shifting his weight slightly. "You said you have seen me before," he said, more carefully now. "Where?" Lily's gaze drifted for a moment, not away from him, but inward, like she was searching through something only she could see. "In pictures," she answered. "At home." The words were simple, too simple, but they landed heavier than they should have. Daniel felt that flicker again, stronger this time. A memory, or maybe just the shape of one, brushing against the edges of his mind. He pushed it down instinctively. "That is not possible," he said, almost automatically. His tone was calm, controlled, the kind that ended conversations. "You must be mistaken." Lily did not argue. She did not step back either. Instead, she reached into her backpack slowly, carefully, like whatever she was holding mattered more than the cold, more than the city, more than him. Daniel watched her hands. Small, slightly trembling from the weather, but deliberate. She pulled out a folded piece of paper, worn soft at the edges, like it had been opened and closed many times. For a second, she just held it, pressing it gently between her fingers. Then she looked up at him again. "My mom kept it," she said. Something in Daniel's chest tightened. He did not know why. He did not want to know why. "Kept what?" he asked, quieter now. Lily stepped closer, just enough to close the space between them without crossing it completely. She unfolded the paper with care, smoothing it against the front of her coat before turning it toward him. Daniel hesitated. He had reviewed contracts worth billions without blinking. He had made decisions that reshaped companies, cities, entire industries. But this felt different. Slower. He reached out. The paper was light in his hand, almost weightless. But the moment his eyes found the image printed on it, the world around him seemed to shift. It was an old photograph. A younger version of himself stood in it, less guarded, less polished. And beside him, Daniel's breath caught, just for a second. A woman, her smile soft. Familiar in a way that was not distant, not faded, just buried. He had not seen that face in years. Not since the day she walked away. His fingers tightened slightly around the edge of the photo. "When did you get this?" he asked, his voice no longer as steady as before. Lily watched him closely. "She said I would understand one day," she replied. "She said, if I ever felt lost, I should find you." The city noise rushed back in all at once, louder than before, cars passing, voices echoing, the revolving doors spinning endlessly behind him. But Daniel did not hear any of it clearly, because something inside him had begun to open, not fully, not yet, but enough to let one impossible thought slip through. And for the first time since he had built his life on certainty, Daniel Whitmore was no longer sure of anything at all. Daniel could not look away from the photograph. The edges of the paper pressed lightly against his fingers, but it felt heavier now, as if it carried years he had carefully locked away. The version of himself in that image looked unfamiliar. Not because it was old, but because it was open. Alive in a way he had not allowed himself to be since. He swallowed slowly, his eyes drifting back to the woman beside him in the photo. Her smile had always been like that, gentle, certain, the kind that did not demand anything, yet somehow made him want to give everything. Her name, Lily's voice broke through softly, pulling him back. Her name was Claire. The world narrowed. Daniel's chest tightened, sharper this time, no longer a distant echo, but something real, something present. Claire. He had not said that name out loud in years. Not since the night everything fell apart. His grip on the photo loosened slightly, like his hands no longer trusted themselves to hold it steady. "Was?" he repeated, his voice quieter than he intended. Lily nodded, her gaze dropping for the first time since they had met. "She got sick," she said simply, "a long time ago." There was no dramatics in her voice, no attempt to make it heavier than it already was. Just truth. And somehow that made it harder to hear. Daniel exhaled slowly, but it did not steady him. His mind was already moving, searching through memories he had buried under years of work, distance, silence. Claire standing by the window of their small apartment, sunlight catching in her hair. Claire laughing at something he could not even remember now. Claire telling him she needed more than promises. He had told himself she would come back. He had told himself there would be time. There was always time, until there was not. His eyes shifted to Lily again. She stood there, small against the towering glass behind him, but there was something unshakable in her presence, something that did not belong to a stranger. "How old are you?" he asked. 8, she answered. 8. The number settled into place with a quiet, devastating precision. Daniel's breath slowed, but his thoughts did not. 8 years. 8 years since Claire left. 8 years since he chose a meeting over a conversation that might have changed everything. His gaze moved back to the photograph, then to Lily, then back again. The lines were starting to connect. Not fully. Not yet. But enough to make his pulse shift, to make the ground beneath his certainty feel less solid. "Why did she tell you to find me?" he asked, his voice barely above the sound of the city now. Lily hesitated. Not out of fear. Out of care. Like she understood that whatever she said next mattered. "She said," Lily began, then paused, choosing her words with a kind of quiet bravery that did not belong to someone her age. "She said you did not know." Daniel felt something in his chest give way. Not break. Not collapse. Just open. A space where certainty used to live. "She said you were not a bad person," Lily continued softly. "Just someone who forgot what mattered." The words did not accuse. They did not blame. They simply existed. And that made them impossible to defend against. Daniel looked at her, really looked this time, at the way she stood, at the calm in her eyes, at the familiarity he could no longer ignore. Then, almost without realizing it, he asked the question that had been forming since the moment she spoke. "Lily." His voice caught slightly, but he did not stop. "What is your full name?" For the first time, Lily smiled. Small, careful, certain. Lily Whitmore. The name did not echo. It landed. Heavy, final, unavoidable. Daniel Whitmore stood perfectly still, the world continuing around him as if nothing had changed. But everything had. "Lily Whitmore," he repeated slowly, like the words did not quite belong to him yet. Lily nodded, watching him carefully. Not anxious, not unsure, just waiting. Waiting for him to catch up to something she had already known. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, a rare crack in his otherwise controlled composure. His thoughts were no longer linear. They moved in fragments now, memories, regrets, questions he had never asked because he had been too certain of his own version of the truth. "You are saying," he began, then stopped. Because there was no clean way to say it, no version of the sentence that did not change everything. He looked at her again, really looked this time, the shape of her eyes, the quiet strength in the way she stood, even the way she held her shoulders, small but steady. Familiar. Too familiar. "Why did she not tell me?" he finally asked, his voice lower, stripped of the distance it once carried. Lily shifted slightly, her fingers tightening around the strap of her backpack. For the first time, there was something softer in her expression. Not doubt, but understanding. "She tried," Lily said gently. Daniel's breath caught. "She wrote letters," Lily continued. "She said she sent them, but we moved a lot. She stopped talking about it after a while." Each word settled into place with quiet precision, forming a picture Daniel could not ignore. Letters he never read. Messages that never reached him. A life unfolding somewhere beyond his reach, while he believed there was nothing to reach for. He let out a slow breath, but it did nothing to ease the weight pressing against his chest. "I would have come," he said, almost to himself. "If I knew, I would have." He stopped again, because he did not know how to finish that sentence honestly. Would he have come? Or would he have told himself he was too busy, just for a little while longer? The question lingered, unanswered. Lily stepped a little closer, closing the distance just enough to soften the space between them. "She said you were important," Lily added. That you built things, big things. Daniel gave a faint, hollow smile. I did. But she also said, Lily paused, choosing her words carefully again, that you forgot how to stop. That landed deeper than anything else. Daniel looked away for a moment, his eyes drifting toward the glass doors of the tower behind him. His reflection stared back, sharp suit, perfect posture, a man who looked like he had everything under control. But standing here, in front of this little girl, that image felt incomplete. He turned back to her. Where have you been staying? He asked, his tone shifting now. Not distant, not formal. Something quieter, more human. Lily shrugged lightly. Different places, with people who help sometimes. There was no complaint in her voice. No expectation either. Just acceptance. And that unsettled him more than anything else. Daniel glanced down at the photograph still in his hand, then back at her. The space between who he was and who he needed to be stretched out in front of him, clear for the first time. He could walk away. He knew how to do that. He had built his life on it. But as he looked at Lily, at the quiet trust she carried without asking for anything in return, something inside him shifted again. Not a thought, not a decision. Something deeper. He folded the photograph carefully, more gently this time, and handed it back to her. Then, after a brief pause, he spoke. Have you eaten today? It was a simple question, but it was the first one that mattered. Lily looked at him for a moment, as if weighing the question. Not because she did not understand it, but because she was deciding how much of the truth to give. A little, she said finally. This morning, Daniel nodded slowly, though something in his chest tightened again. Morning felt far away now. The air had grown colder, the light shifting toward late afternoon, long shadows stretching across the sidewalk like time itself was pulling forward. That is not enough, he said, more firmly than before. It was not a command. It was a decision. He glanced toward the street, raising his hand slightly. Within seconds, a black town car eased to the curb, smooth and quiet, like it had been waiting for him all along. Lily's eyes followed the movement, but she did not step back. She did not look impressed either, just curious. Daniel opened the rear door himself, then paused, turning back to her. You can sit inside, he said. It is warm. For a brief second, Lily hesitated, not out of fear, but out of habit. The kind that comes from not expecting things to last. Daniel noticed it, that small pause, and something in him shifted again, more sharply this time. I am not going anywhere, he added, softer now. I promise. The word lingered between them. Promise. It was not a word he used lightly. In fact, it was one he had avoided for years. But this time, it felt necessary. Lily studied his face, searching for something she could believe in. Then, slowly, she nodded and stepped forward, climbing into the car. Her small frame seemed to disappear into the leather seat, the warmth wrapping around her almost instantly. Daniel closed the door gently and walked around to the other side, sliding in beside her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The car pulled away from the curb, merging into traffic as the city lights began to flicker on, one by one. Where are we going? Lily asked quietly. Daniel looked out the window, then back at her. Somewhere you can eat, he said, and somewhere we can talk. Lily nodded, accepting that answer without question. She reached into her backpack again, pulling out a small, slightly crushed paper bag. From it, she took a folded napkin, smoothing it carefully on her lap. Inside was a half piece of bread, saved, not eaten. Daniel watched the gesture in silence. Not because it surprised him, but because it said everything. "You were saving that," he said. Lily gave a small shrug. "In case I needed it later." "Later." Daniel leaned back slightly, exhaling through his nose as the weight of that single word settled in. He had spent years planning for later. Expanding, building, securing a future that always seemed just one step ahead. But this was different. This was a child measuring time in pieces of bread. His gaze shifted to her again, softer now. "You will not have to do that anymore," he said. Lily looked up at him, her expression calm, but searching. Not fully convinced. Not yet. And Daniel understood why. Because for the first time in a long time, he was not just offering help. He was stepping into something he could not control. Something that required more than money. More than solutions. Something that required him to stay. The car moved through the city, lights reflecting across the windows like quiet stars. And inside, without announcement, without certainty, a new kind of beginning had already started. The restaurant was quiet, tucked between a corner pharmacy and a bookstore that had already turned off half its lights for the evening. Warm yellow light spilled through the windows, soft against the deepening blue of the city outside. Daniel stepped out of the car first, then turned, offering his hand without thinking. Lily noticed. She looked at his hand for a second, then placed hers in it. Small, cool, trusting, but carefully. Inside, the air felt different, slower. The kind of place where no one rushed you, where conversations lingered instead of competing with noise. They were seated in a booth near the window. Lily slid in quietly, her backpack resting beside her like it was part of her. Daniel sat across from her, his posture still composed, but something in his shoulders had softened. A server approached, smiling gently, placing 2 menus on the table. Daniel did not open his. "Whatever you would like," he said to Lily. She hesitated again, eyes scanning the menu like it was written in a language she had not practiced enough. "Anything?" she asked. "Anything," he repeated. She nodded slowly, then pointed to something simple. "Grilled cheese and soup, please." Daniel nodded to the server. "And a glass of milk," he added quietly. When the server left, silence settled between them again. Not uncomfortable, just new. Lily rested her hands on the table, then glanced around the room. People talking softly, a couple laughing near the back, the quiet clink of silverware against plates. "It is nice here," she said. Daniel followed her gaze. "It is," but he was not really looking at the room. He was looking at her, trying to understand how something so small could shift something so large inside him. "Did your mum bring you to places like this?" he asked. Lily shook her head gently. "Sometimes we shared food," she said. "She said it tastes better that way." Daniel gave a faint nod, the corner of his mouth tightening just slightly. "That sounds like her," he said. The words came easier now. Not effortless, but no longer blocked. The food arrived soon after, steam rising softly from the bowl of soup, the grilled cheese cut neatly in half. Lily paused before touching it, not because she did not want it, because she was used to waiting. Daniel noticed. "It is okay," he said quietly. "You can eat." She looked at him once, then nodded. Her first bite was small, careful. But then something shifted. Her movements became quicker, more natural, like her body was remembering something it had been holding back. Daniel sat still, watching. Not with pity, with something deeper. Recognition. Halfway through, Lily slowed down, placing one half of the sandwich carefully onto the napkin beside her. "For later," she said softly. Daniel leaned forward slightly. "You do not need to save it," he said. Lily looked at him, her expression calm but firm in a quiet way. "I know," she replied. A small pause. "But I want to." Daniel did not argue. Instead, he nodded. Because he understood. This was not about food. This was about safety, control, holding on to something in a world that had not always held on to her. He leaned back slightly, his voice softer now. "Lily." She looked up. "We are going to figure everything out," he said. "Together." The word settled between them. Together. Lily did not smile. Not fully. But something in her eyes shifted. And for the first time that night, it looked a little less like she was standing on her own. The restaurant grew quieter as the evening settled in. Outside, the last streaks of daylight faded into a soft, steady glow of streetlights. Inside, the world felt contained, warm, predictable, almost untouched by the uncertainty waiting beyond the glass. Daniel paid the bill without looking at the total. For years, numbers had been the only language he trusted. Tonight, they felt irrelevant. Lily carefully folded the napkin around the remaining half of her sandwich, placing it back into her bag with the same care she had shown earlier. Every movement deliberate, thoughtful, like she had learned to carry her world in small, manageable pieces. Daniel stood, then paused. "Ready?" he asked. Lily nodded and slid out of the booth, her backpack already resting securely on her shoulders. They stepped outside together. The air was cooler now, a quiet reminder that the day had fully turned. The city had slowed, but it had not stopped. Cars passed, lights flickered, life continued. But for Daniel, something had shifted into focus. The car pulled up again, smooth and silent. This time, Lily did not hesitate. She climbed in first. Daniel followed. The door closed gently behind them, sealing off the noise of the street. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Lily reached into her backpack again. Daniel noticed the movement immediately. She pulled out the folded photograph once more, holding it carefully between her fingers. She did not open it right away. Instead, she looked at him. "My mum used to talk about you," she said softly. Daniel's posture straightened slightly. Not defensive, not guarded, just attentive. "What did she say?" he asked. Lily glanced down at the photograph, then back up. "She said you were the kind of person who could build anything," she said, "that you saw things other people did not." Daniel let out a quiet breath, his eyes lowering for a second. "That sounds like something I would have liked to believe," he replied. Lily tilted her head. "She also said," Lily continued, her voice steady but gentler now, "that you were afraid of losing things you could not control." That landed differently. Daniel did not answer right away, because it was true, not the version he told the world, but the one he had lived with. "I thought if I kept everything structured, predictable," he began slowly, "then nothing important would slip away." Lily watched him carefully. "But it did anyway," she said. Not harsh, not accusing, just clear. Daniel nodded once. "Yes," he admitted. The word felt heavier than any deal he had ever signed. Silence followed, but it was no longer empty. It carried understanding now. Lily unfolded the photograph and looked at it again, her small finger tracing the edge lightly. "She kept this with her," Lily said. "Everywhere we went." Daniel leaned forward slightly, his eyes drawn to the image again. A life he had once stood inside, now something he had to rediscover piece by piece. "Why did you come today?" he asked quietly. Lily looked up. This time, there was no hesitation. "Because," she said, "if I ever found you," Lily said, her voice soft but certain. I would not feel alone anymore. The words settled into the space between them, deeper than anything before. Daniel felt it then. Not guilt, not regret. Something else. Responsibility. Not the kind written into contracts. The kind you cannot walk away from. He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, he did not see a stranger. He saw what he had missed, and what was still in front of him. The car moved forward through the quiet city streets, and inside, without announcement, without certainty, the past and the present had finally met, and neither of them would be able to turn away again. The car slowed as it turned onto a quieter street. The noise of the city faded behind them, replaced by stillness, tree-lined sidewalks, warm porch lights, homes that felt lived in. It was the kind of place Daniel had not visited in years, not because he could not, but because he never had a reason to. Until now. Lily shifted slightly in her seat, her eyes moving from the window back to him. "Where are we going?" she asked. Daniel did not answer right away. Because this was the moment. Not a business decision, not something he could calculate or delay. A choice. He looked at her, really looked, and let the silence sit just long enough to mean something. "Home," he said finally. The word felt unfamiliar on his tongue. Lily blinked once, as if testing it in her own mind. "Your home?" she asked. Daniel shook his head gently. "Our home." The driver pulled up to a tall building, glass and steel rising into the night sky. Lights glowed from the upper floors, soft against the dark. Daniel stepped out first, then turned, offering his hand again. This time, Lily did not hesitate at all. She took it. Inside, the lobby was quiet, polished marble reflecting the overhead lights. The front desk attendant straightened immediately, ready to greet him, but Daniel gave a small nod that said everything without words. No announcements, no distance, just presence. They moved toward the elevator. Lily stood close to him now, not out of fear, but because the space felt new and he felt steady. The doors closed softly. As the elevator rose, the city lights spread out beneath them, a sea of gold and white stretching for miles. Lily looked out, her eyes wide but not overwhelmed, just taking it in. "It is high," she said quietly. Daniel nodded. "It is." But for the first time, he did not feel above anything. Not above the city, not above her. Just beside her. The doors opened. The penthouse was silent when they stepped in. Clean lines, expensive furniture, everything exactly where it should be. And yet, something about it felt incomplete. Lily walked in slowly, her footsteps soft against the floor. She looked around, not impressed, not intimidated, just observing. Daniel watched her, seeing his space through her eyes for the first time. All the years he had built this place into something perfect. And how empty it had always been. He stepped forward, then paused. "Lily," he said. She turned. There was no script for this, no prepared words. So he chose the only ones that mattered. "You can stay here," he said, "as long as you want, as long as you need." The room seemed to hold its breath. Lily looked at him, her expression calm, but searching again, just a little. "Are you sure?" she asked. Daniel nodded. Not quickly, not casually, with intention. "Yes," he said, "I am." A small silence followed. Then Lily took a step closer. Not all the way, but closer than before. And in that quiet space, something settled. Not everything. Not yet. But enough to know. This was no longer just a moment. This was the beginning of something neither of them would walk away from. The silence in the penthouse was different now. Not empty, not cold, just waiting. Lily stood near the center of the room, her small figure surrounded by space that had never been meant for someone like her. But somehow, she did not look out of place. She looked necessary. Daniel moved slowly, not wanting to break the fragile balance that had formed between them. He walked toward the kitchen, then paused, turning back. "Are you tired?" he asked. Lily thought about it for a second, then nodded. "A little." Daniel gave a small, understanding nod. "I will show you where you can rest." He led her down the hallway, past rooms that had always been closed, always untouched, doors that existed more for design than for living. Until now. He stopped at one and opened it. Inside, the room was simple. A bed, neatly made, soft lighting, a window overlooking the city. It was not grand. It was not overwhelming. It felt quiet. Lily stepped inside slowly, her eyes taking in every detail, not with excitement, with care, like she was memorizing it. "For me?" she asked. Daniel leaned lightly against the doorframe. "For you," he said. She placed her backpack gently on the floor, then sat on the edge of the bed, her hands resting in her lap. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Lily looked up at him. "You stayed," she said. It was not a question. It was an observation. Daniel felt something shift again, softer this time. "I said I would," he replied. Lily nodded once, accepting that answer in a way that carried more weight than any contract he had ever signed. She reached into her backpack one last time, pulling out the folded photograph. She held it for a moment, then placed it carefully on the nightstand beside the bed. Not hidden, not protected, just placed, as if it had finally found where it belonged. Daniel watched that small action, understanding it without needing explanation. A past no longer carried alone. A memory no longer waiting to be found. He stepped closer, just enough to stand beside the door. Not inside, not leaving. "I will be right here," he said quietly. "If you need anything." Lily lay back slowly, pulling the blanket over herself. For a second, she looked smaller than before. Not because she was alone, because she was finally safe enough to rest. "Good night," she whispered. Daniel paused. It had been years since that phrase meant anything to him. But tonight, it did. "Good night, Lily." He turned off the light, leaving the door slightly open. A soft line of warmth stretching into the hallway. Daniel stood there for a moment longer, listening to the quiet rhythm of the room behind him. Then he looked out toward the city. All the lights, all the noise, all the things he had built his life around. And for the first time, none of it felt like the center anymore. Because real wealth had never been the height of a building, or the size of a number. It was this: a small room, a quiet breath, a second chance he never knew he needed, until someone small enough to be overlooked stopped him and called him back home.